This episode is brought to you by Instant Impact. Instant Impact provides transformative talent solutions to small and mid-sized companies that are making between 30 and 500 hires each year. If your recruitment's giving you a headache, don't know where to start, then give the team at Instant Impact a call or visit www.instant-impact.com for more information. Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About HR. I'm your host, Felix Mitchell. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to welcome Mike Tobin. Mike is a hugely successful CEO and entrepreneur whose last executive role was at the Telecity Group, one of Europe's largest data centers. And since then, he's gone on to hold a number of really interesting non-exec roles and has even written books, everything from the secrets of the data center industry to his book on his radical management philosophy. And there's more on that later, don't worry. In addition to all of that, I felt I had to mention Mike is a passionate philanthropist. You've got your own charitable foundation, I believe, and supports a wide range of incredible charities. And I think this is going to put some of what I've done in context here. You ran 40 marathons in 40 days.
I did indeed. And
yes. Then trekked to the South Pole for another.
Yep, absolutely. And both as painful as each other, I might add. But one was at minus 67 degrees and one wasn't.
Well, hopefully this podcast will be slightly less painful.
I'm sure it will.
Than those.
I'm sure.
Well, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Well, there's so much to dig into. But let's start with, I like the big picture questions. You've done so much and succeeded in a number of different walks of life. But looking back, what would you say have been the biggest factors in your successes and the biggest in your failures?
Well, first of all, I tell my kids all the time that I don't like to use the word failure. I like to have the concept of either you succeed or you learn. So both ways you come out better rather than coming out with a negative, which is the implication of failure. But I guess luck has played a tremendous amount in my past, a very, very big role, and the ability or the willingness to say yes a lot, right? So hence, a few weeks ago, we didn't know each other, and a guy that I used to work with 30 years ago introduces us, and here we are doing it. So saying yes, I think, creates opportunity. Opportunity allows luck to play its part, and that's where you get good fortune. And if you don't get good fortune, you get learning.
No, I really like that. And I think the luck element in particular really resonates.
Well, there are an awful lot of people that are infinitely better qualified and articulate than I am that have perhaps not been as lucky as I have. So, that's why I say luck, it plays a big part of it.
Well, it's an interesting one because it feels very socially acceptable to say, I've been lucky.
Well, I've been saying it since it wasn't socially acceptable to say it. But
well, I suppose that's good. But it to me it feels much, especially in a business context, it feels much less acceptable to say I've been unlucky.
But I guess the implication of being unlucky means that there are things outside of your control which have meant that you were not successful. And I kind of, there probably are things outside of your control, but then you can live your life as a victim, or you can live it as someone that kind of deals. I like to look at obstacles in life as the things that put barriers between you and everyone else, as long as you can get over them, right? So if you think about everyone, you're hardly likely to be the only person that has to deal with X issue in life, right? So if there's hundreds of you having to deal with that same issue, the quicker you can overcome it, the greater the distance between you and your competition. So effectively, obstacles give the opportunities to create distance between you and everyone else. So you should welcome an obstacle as an opportunity to differentiate.
I mean, that's great, and it's one of the things that we think about at Instant Impact quite a lot. We've obviously been through quite a turbulent time with the pandemic, and then ups and downs of hiring demand and business growth and business confidence. And the times where we have, I think, most outperformed some of our competitors are when we've overcome obstacles faster than others have.
Absolutely.
And I think the ability to be the ability to be agile and to be creative, which I'm sure we'll come on to later, are absolute tools in our arsenal. I mean, particularly when...
Well, the chap that taught me to sell back in, when I was in my very early 20s, probably about 20 years old, so a very long time ago, 40 years ago, was Brian Adams' cousin, believe it or not, which is another story from back in the day, a chap called Ian Watson. And he said, imagine you're a broom salesman and your company is a family business. It's been selling brooms for 100 years or more. And you've got all the data on who buys brooms and how many brooms you're likely to sell and all that sort of stuff. And you know that on average, in 100 houses you knock on doors to, 98 of them will have a broom. One of them might not have a broom but can't afford yours. And one of them doesn't have a broom and can afford yours and buys it. So, typical stats. So when you come across a row of Victorian houses and you knock on the first door and they open the door and you go, hello, and they slam the door in your face because you see you've got a broom in your hand. How do you feel about that, right? Do you feel demoralized, or do you just go, yes, because I'm one step closer to my sale? So if you can get comfortable with the fact that you are absolutely not going to sell to every house, but you are absolutely, by the law of averages that you know from 100 years of data, that you will sell to 1 in 100, then the quicker you can get through that, right, the quicker you become successful. So looking at failure, as it were, as an opportunity to overcome the hurdle, right? You get, first of all, you're in a better frame of mind because you're not feeling negative about the rejection every day. But secondly, you get to your positive outcome of a sale quicker. Yeah,
I mean, I that really makes sense. Really resonates. Having been in sales roles myself, definitely a story I can relate to. Now, I'd love to dig into that other point you made, which is to keep an open mind and say yes to as many things as you can. Now, in prep for this podcast, you mentioned that you are traveling to a ridiculous number of places and you've got all of these different pulls on your time. And I think it's definitely something that I hear from my audience, who are mostly HR leaders or talent acquisition leaders. They feel pulled from pillar to post, and the opportunity to step back and explore, have a conversation with that broom salesman, the metaphorical broom salesman that's at their door, someone coming with a new idea or a big opportunity or a big obstacle they need to overcome. Finding that time feels very challenging.
Yeah.
So how do you make time to keep that open mind?
So I think there's two things. I think first of all, we all have time, right? We have time that we don't realize. When I did my 40 marathons in 40 days, I was doing them from 4:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock in the morning, every morning, and finishing in a corporate, doing a keynote speech to their people coming in at 9 a.m. about the fact that they always say, oh, I can't do exercise because I don't have time. And then I was going home and having an ice bath, having my breakfast and going on to do my day job, right? So, you have time. Everyone has time. So that's part one. And the second thing is, if you feel like every conversation you need to get something out of, or it's a waste of time, right, then that's also an inaccurate kind of context, because throughout my life, the amount of times that I've had conversations, just going to sort of networking events, drinks events, and sometimes I say to my wife, oh God, not another one. I really don't want to. And like, she goes, don't go. I said, well, I have to, because almost certainly nothing's going to come of it that day. And maybe for another 5 years. The amount of times I've had a call, just like this conversation, as I mentioned earlier on, after years and years from someone that connects in and interacts. Literally today, I've had 2 texts from people that one I haven't spoken to in 4 years, one I haven't spoken to probably in about 10 years. And I've had 2 texts from them today, right, about completely different things. But one's asked me to have a look at an asset that he wants investment in, and the other one's just said, I'm over from the US, can we go for a drink? Amazing. So I don't know what he wants yet, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. But the point being, you've almost got to build a kind of just like, again, on the sales side, you get a bunch of, to have, close to deals, you've got to have a bunch of suspects, and you've got to have prospects, and you've got to have marketing above that, and you kind of build this funnel of stuff that ends up being deliverables and outcomes. Well, that's the same as conversations, right? You need lots and lots and lots and lots of conversations, and not being negative in the conversations, just listening. And if you don't have anything positive to contribute to that, then just be a receptor, and then going away. And at some point, these things spin around again. You know, there's not much new in business, right? There's new technology. There's the way business is conducted. There's nothing new really about it. It's about building trust with someone, right? And as a salesperson, or as a human being in life, it's all about the trust you can build between you and the person in front of you. And you can build like a VPN between them and you. And then whatever you put down there, they'll accept it because they trust you. Until, of course, you send something down that's not appropriate to them, and then the trust is broken, right? The VPN is broken. So building these VPNs of trust with people, you don't necessarily have anything to send down at that point, but there might be in the future. So having as many kind of the channels open is a really valuable way of getting shortcuts in the end to value. Because when you say, oh, I don't have time for it, when someone calls you up and says, oh, can you do this for me? Wow, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. I spent 0 time nurturing this over the last 5 years, but I had a conversation somewhere, some time ago.
It's really interesting. And I think people often think about, I hear a lot of people talking about how can I add to my personal brand? How can I have a side hustle? How do I add value for myself in the future outside of my job? And it's definitely that network.
It is, and it's also just not expect. So my son said to me the other day, "It's like, what can I do tomorrow to earn money?" And I'm like, well, he's only in early 20s, right? So he's got a while to go. He doesn't have to worry about that just yet. But again, engaging with people and being a good person, right? Being a personable person, so you can have conversations and you can engage on perhaps the topics that they're interested in rather than the ones that you're only interested in. But I think what. It's really interesting that, so I was in Liverpool Street a couple of weeks ago, and you can't see, but I have new heels on these shoes, and I'd come out and it was pouring with rain. I ran across the road from Liverpool Street, and there's a key maker and shoe healer. It's like less than half the size of this studio, and I ran in there because it was peeing down the rain, right? So, but I sat there and I thought, okay, I'm going to sit until it stops. I was early for my meeting, so I said, can you just do these while I wait? So I said, yeah, okay. And when I was in it, he had these little tiny umbrellas hanging up in the thing. And this guy comes in because it's right. How much for the umbrella? And he goes, £15. Right, done. £15. I said, how much do you buy these for? He said, £1.30. And he's selling them for 15 quid. I said, how much do you sell them for when it's not raining? He says, 5 quid.
Yeah, wow.
So why am I saying this? Well, when you have conversations with people, right, a lot of people think in order to, like, I have an opportunity to network. So I have to ask this person what he thinks of my idea. Can he invest in my business? That VPN isn't built. So you need that VPN of trust to sell anything, right? And when you go to a bank and ask for a loan, they're not going to give it to you unless you've built that trust first of all. So when you go into a networking environment, don't immediately go up to someone, I'm doing a beeline to the richest guy in the room, and I'm going to ask him to invest in my business. And if it doesn't work, then I've been a failure at this particular network, right? So you go in there and build say, hi, how are you? What are you doing? Where are you from? Build something. And go again another time, have a coffee, have a beer, and eventually you can ask him for something, because then you're building that trust dynamic. But people tend to think about time as being wasted if they're not getting an outcome immediately, and things don't necessarily work that way.
Great. We're now moving on to things that don't work that way, which is, and you segued perfectly, Mike, into the topic that I want to spend a decent amount of time on, which is people. You're a real expert here around motivation and leadership in the workplace and outside of the workplace, and have a few controversial opinions in the space. I wonder if you could just start with like a really high level on what it is that you think motivates people.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I believe that we should eliminate the concept of management, because it's highly illogical to have to manage someone. If you're recruiting someone to do a job, right? Yeah, there's a bit of training you can do, but it's highly illogical to say, I'm gonna bring in this person who's apparently the best I can find in marketing, and then proceed to try and tell them, when you have no marketing background, how to be the best marketing person, right? Same with finance and so on and so forth. So what you should be doing, rather than trying to manage them, is to try to lead them. And the only job of a leader is to create more leaders, right? It's simply, right, give people a vision. Don't try and tell them necessarily how to get there. What do you want to be famous for? What do you want to, when people think of you as a company, what should come in their mind in 5 years' time? How do you want to be positioned? And then say, look, you're the best at what you do, so do everything you can to get there. And then you can work with this guy who's the best at what he does, and he'll do everything he can do to get there as well. So instead of giving them a prescriptive route, now my first book was Forget Strategy, Get Results. Right? It's a bit tongue-in-cheek because you still have a vision. If you're a sailor, for example, right, and your objective tomorrow morning is, I'm going to take my little yacht from Dover to Calais, and I'm going to have some moules frites in Calais in the morning, right? And then when you wake up in the morning, the wind is blowing completely against you. We don't just go, oh, forget it, then I'll go another day. I'm going to tack a little bit more, do a left and right, use the wind a bit more. It might have to manipulate my sails a bit more, but I'm still going to have my moules frites in Calais. Okay, so rather than plan the route, just keep the vision of the outcome in your mind, and allow people to go with the flow. Because the challenge with Jean-Paul Sartre said something very clever, and you don't associate this with Jean-Paul Sartre, but he was talking about soccer, and he said, in football, everything is complicated by the presence of the opposite team. Right? And you can draw out your plan and your strategy and all that, but no one tells the other side, and they go along and mess it up for you, right? So yeah, you can have a plan, but it's probably not going to last the game, right? So when you're thinking about how do you deal with something, how are you looking to beat competitors, how are you looking to gain traction, you're probably going to be overrun by other people while you're still trying to work out your strategy. Right? And in the old days, we used to have products. We used to go for excellence, right? So nothing would be released as a product until it was perfect. And now, Microsoft was the kind of main proponent of this. In the old days, it was Windows 4, Windows 5, Windows 6. And now we don't even know what Windows we're on. And we get updates while we sleep, and there's bug fixes pretty much every day. We don't care. We just live with it because we'd rather have best in class today and know it's consistently being improved than have to wait 3 years to have almost all of the functionality. Right.
Well, and we don't have to go through the buying process as well to get another vision pitched to us and another.
Exactly. So it's about getting, continuous progress towards a destination is better than trying to get excellence at a destination, because the destination will always change, and technology is driving that ever faster.
And it definitely feels like that in the workplace today. I think that speed of change is, sometimes quite exhausting.
Yeah.
I'd love to dig a little bit more into that concept of having a vision and relinquishing control over the actions that get you there. It's all well and good to talk about it for a yacht. I'm not a sailor. So it actually might be much more complex than I'm giving it credit for. But in a complex organization where, let's take the people and culture, right? So they're in charge of comp and benefits. Then you've got your sales team who want to be able to hire the best salespeople in the industry, and so they want a really compelling bonus structure.
Yeah.
If you suddenly have someone in your chief people officer comes in and goes, right, we don't do bonuses anymore because we don't believe in them. That's what the studies say. Your chief revenue officers saying, well, that's not going to work for me because I want to go this way. That's how I get to my vision. You've got chief people officers saying, that's how we get to our vision from a people perspective. How do you do it without a plan? There's so many conflicting
Well, clearly, the management team is somebody's got to give way in that context, right? And I think if you lift the vision above that and you say, okay, what do you want to be famous for? What's the exit story here? Well, who ultimately, right? Yes, people want to make money, but they want to have quality of life within the work environment. They want to have all different things, but generally, money is still a large factor. And as you go through the sort of sales entities to the other departments, there is a peak in money being a factor, right? And I think you need to say, well, okay, if we are to get together to be famous for X by X and worth X in the market, then all of these things have to be satisfied. So the HR person has to say, this makes absolute sense for us to deliver on our growth goals. Mm. Right. So I don't imagine that the sales guy is necessarily saying something negative to the HR person, like, oh, well, you're going to have to give me half of your salary in order to do that. I don't think that's the case, right? So I think there's one has to be cognizant that people are motivated by different things, right? And we talk about diversity on boards, all these different things like that. But if we're saying that lots of different attitudes, cultures, people make a better combined approach, then we shouldn't try to manage a company's incentive program, for example, in 100% the same way across everybody. Because by definition, a diverse approach is a better approach. And you're going to have people that are motivated by different things. So I would side, as I would naturally, as you know, with the sales guy in that case, to tell the HR people that's probably not the right way forward.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, and I thought that's the side that you'd tend towards. I suppose underlying that then is there are lots of big decisions that need to be taken from by an organisation to get from point A to point B, to get to their vision at the end of the day. Without traditional management, you can't just hope that people coalesce towards the same.
Well, so this is the same as when we were speaking earlier on. You've got young kids, right? So they're probably too young for this yet. But as they get older, right, your management style will be, don't do that, right? So, for example, don't touch that because it's hot. What's the first thing the child's going to do is touch it because it doesn't understand what hot is, really, right? So, ouch, understood. So leadership is, right, well, we can discuss what hot might be. And then if you really want to touch it after I tell you and we experience it, knock yourself out, right? Because that's another form of experience. But I think that's why the leadership and management, people find it harder and harder to manage when they start to get groups of people that are not unified in their view, right? Because you're corralling people that don't necessarily want to go in the same direction. But if you allow them, just say, look, find your own way, find your own path. That's where we're going. Up there is where we're going. That's the vision, right? So I had this business, Telecity, and actually that was a merger of two companies. One was called Telecity, the other was called Redbus, and they were both almost identical, biggest competitors, neither doing particularly well on their own, but they were two very different cultures. One was very kind of process-oriented, very rigid, paperwork was good, all that sort of stuff. But and then the other one was very sort of cavalier, would cut a deal, all sorts of business sort of, yeah, we can do that, but had very little in terms of paperwork and the whole thing. So it was a very good marriage anyway, regardless of the fact you're eliminating your biggest competitor and so on and so forth. So by merging the businesses, it became the beginning of a great story. But when I told my management team I was about to do this, in their mind, all they could see is, consolidation means synergies means redundancies, blah, 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 blah. And so the entire negative view of life, right? And I said, why don't you like that? What is, well, ultimately it boiled down to everybody being afraid of losing their jobs. Mm-hmm. And fear is one of these emotions that is the most useless that we probably possess, right? Because we don't fear the past. We don't fear generally the present because we're in it. We either deal with it or don't. we very much fear the future, and we always overlay X times the risk onto the future, right? And it's like paying interest on a debt you haven't drawn yet, because it hasn't happened. And if there's something you can do to mitigate the outcome that you fear, then you should do it. And if there's nothing you can do, well, then there's nothing you can do, right? Just either way, don't worry about it. Don't sit there and depressed and, oh God, like this, right? So I couldn't get this across. And this is part of, we just touched on it before we came online here. And it's about getting the right messaging. And I couldn't get the message across because people were consumed in this sort of single-minded approach that there was going to be redundancies and everything else. So I took them up to Scotland, and on the old Forth Road Bridge, if you cross there and you double back on yourself as you hit the other side, there's a huge aquarium. Now we were going up in a bus. They thought we were going up for a management meeting in Edinburgh. We pulled up there, and as I got people to come out, and I guess they thought that we were having a pit stop for bathroom break or something. And I said, okay, 2 by 2, get into your breathing apparatus and your wetsuits, and then you go, right? And because they were like confused and they're doing as they're told, and they'd flip their legs. It was probably 30, 40 meters deep. This aquarium was huge. And as they got in, they saw these shark fins floating on the water like this, right? And they went, you're absolutely kidding. And 2 by 2, they went down, and the sharks were huge, bigger than this table in front of us, and 3-4 meters long, and they would come to within a foot of your face, and they were enormous. And when everyone came out, I said, okay, how did you feel when you realized what you were about to do? When it was an impending, no nets, no cage, you were actually going to be in with these sharks. Well, they said, I was terrified. I hated you. Where's HR when you need them, sort of thing. And I said, well, how did you feel when you're actually on the seabed they were around you, but you were actually living it? They said, well, I was still petrified, but it was kind of exciting. It was like, wow, I'm actually doing this. I can't believe it. And I said, how did you feel when you came out? And they said, well, I don't want to do it again, but it was an amazing, life-changing experience. It's something I can tell my grandkids. Oh my God, I'm so happy I've got through it. So I said, well, okay, whenever you're thinking about like approaching something that you're potentially afraid of, right? Remember that when you're going into it, you're overdoing the fear, right? It's highly likely that nothing's going to come of it. The second thing is that when you're in it, you're probably going to learn a lot about yourself, about the situation, about everything else. And then the third thing is when you come out of it, you're probably going to be enriched, right? So have that kind of process. And that allowed them to think about the entire consolidation play that we were doing in a completely different way. So getting the message across is not necessarily as easy as just telling people, this is what we're doing and the outcome is going to be that. Because they go, yeah. So, but showing them, giving them an articulated vision and then an articulated way to think about it is a really interesting way to put points across.
That's really, really interesting. And I guess part of the reason why you were able to achieve that mindset shift, do you think, is actually, yes, of course, there was the fear, there was the process of going through it, but sometimes you just have to allow people to see themselves and others in a different light by radically shifting the environment.
Totally. It's like, this guy's crazy. We're now sticking together because this guy's crazy.
You were the enemy. Good work.
And then we did merge the businesses together, right? And we just had this enlarged board. And of course, most people got it and they integrated well. And there was a couple of outliers. Bear in mind the difference in cultures that I mentioned earlier on. They're very different cultures in the companies. And two of them just kept talking about them and us still over time, right? And so most of them had said, like, come on, guys, we're one company now. And the others were, you should be doing it like we do it. Mm-hmm. But well, now, that wasn't working, right? So I took them up to the North Pole. And in the north part of Sweden, just inside the Polar Circle, there's an ice hotel. It gets built every year from scratch out of big blocks of ice from the fjords. And it's stunning. And the rooms are ice, the beds are ice, the tables are ice, your plates are made of ice. Everything is made of ice. Your cup, your glasses, And so I took them up there, and it was about minus 12, minus 13 degrees at the time. And what was very important is I made them go to the ice bar, which was downing some vodka shots and things like that. And at the end, once they were well, kind of, once the mood had calmed, got a little bit more jovial, I explained the sleeping arrangements. One thing you have to do in this place is you have to sleep 2 per bed for body warmth.
Oh, really?
So the ones that didn't get on well together, I made them sleep together, right? And they were the best of friends in the morning, because one of the things you don't do in a nice hotel is you don't have a toilet, right? Because that would melt. And therefore, in order to go to the loo, you'd have to wake up the person next to you and say, excuse me, I have to go outside to go to the toilet, but I can't go out without accompaniment, because if you slip and bang your head, you're dead in half an hour. So while I'm doing my business, can you shine a torch and keep me company? And then when we come back in, I'll warm my feet up on your bottom, type thing. But so the whole concept of breaking down, as you say, breaking down the context of them and us into, these are 2 human beings. Right, just get on and get on with each other, and stop saying them and us all the time. And that actually worked. So, it became a very, very strong business, and we took it from 6 million. We relisted it for a couple of 100 million, and eventually sold in 2014 for about 3.6 billion. So a great story.
It absolutely is. And there's so much evidence that that sort of hardship and adversity can be so powerful in building teams. I think that's really...
Yeah, you don't probably... you can always go kind of places like Go Ape and walk across a tightrope or something in the middle of the forest. It's probably a little less stressful than swimming with sharks, but...
More budget conscious. There's a fear factor for everyone, right?
Exactly.
Right at home.
The way, yeah, exactly. Every wallet tells a story. I know what I'm saying.
And don't worry, all of this advice is going through a very sensible HR filter. It's on the other end. So let's talk a little bit then around because I think you've touched on it. But what would you say is the CEO's role in informing culture within an organization?
Yeah, I think it's really just creating more leaders, right? And I said it earlier on, pick the best people you can find in every role and let them do their thing, right? So it's really important that you articulate what you're trying to achieve. And you can do it in what do I want to be famous for? How big do I want to be? How, what's the time frame? All those things. And then allow them the freedom, to push the envelope, because you're probably asking them to do things that either they or the market or the industry has not done before. So they can't go to the library and buy and get a book at like, how did the last person do what I want to do now, right? So they're writing the book. So by definition, they're going to get things wrong. And how do you remove the fear of failure, right? You spoke about fear being rubbish. So how do you say, okay, try it? And as long as you're learning from how not to do it each time you get it wrong, then we're heading in the right direction. We're knocking on the door that doesn't need the broom, right? We are eliminating the things that don't need to be done. And by definition, you get to the thing that's the right thing to do. So if you can create the space for your team that says, as long as you're not making the same mistake 50 times, right? Because that's another issue. But by pushing the envelope and understanding where it works and where it doesn't work, you're actually achieving more than your competitor. So you're overcoming that barrier, the hurdle, and creating distance between you and your competition. And I think the second thing is, right, is when you have a team, if someone says to you, like, hey, Mike, we've got a problem here, right? And go, okay, what do you think we should do about that? Well, I think we should do this, this, and this. Okay. Any reason we wouldn't do that? No, I thought I'd just come and check with you. Well, he's testing the fear factor and everything else again, right? So empowering them and saying, look, go ahead. We're all in this together, right? And if I've recruited you because you're the best at that I can find, and you think that's the thing to do, then that's the thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's so important for creating that autonomy, but then also that accountability within the team. Because if they come to you and said, hey, can we do this? And you say, yeah, that, or what should we do? And you say, let's do this. Then you're the one that's
and the one that's responsible. Yes, an absolution of responsibility as well. Yeah, it's got all upsides, everything.
So I'd love to talk about vision. A lot of people talk about vision, but it feels like quite a hard thing to come up with an enduring vision that will motivate your 19-year-old apprentice as much as it does your 55-year-old VP of sales. What would you say the hallmarks of an enduring vision for an organization?
Well, I think if you can combine, so the apprentice doesn't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be in his life, right? So, trying to articulate to him that maybe this isn't the step to the outcome, but it's certainly a step on the way to an outcome that maybe we haven't seen yet. So what this is allowing you to come out of your apprenticeship with a set of skills that are going to be valuable to you in your life, tick lots of boxes on the CV, but make sure that you then have the ability to move to technical director or whatever as your next level, right? That's the aspirational vision for him at that point. It doesn't all have to be like the 55-year-old sales guy is probably saying, I need to pay off my mortgage and, one big deal, or my options package is probably going to pay off my mortgage or something like that, right? His aspirational vision is going to be different to your apprentice, right? So you've got the company position. It's like that's where we are, and what we want to be famous for. And that's why I think these kind of strap lines and taglines underneath people's logos and things, they tell you a lot about what that company wants to be known as or famous for. But I think if you can impart that, and then you say, okay, within that, you've all got your own little story to tell and your own game to play, right? But it should all be contributing to that direction. And they shouldn't be, that guy in his last year of apprenticeship shouldn't be going in a different direction. He just simply has different sets of visible goals to himself, right? And, could you imagine when you were 5 years old that you'd be sitting in a room like this doing podcasts? Almost certainly not. Probably didn't know what a podcast was then, right? So absolutely. I certainly didn't at 5 years old because they didn't exist. So, the point being that you evolve your aspiration over time, and that's quite a good thing for people because you want the right attitude and culture from people. But within the context of a company, you then strap on this kind of global company vision that they can say, do all your things, but do it in this way. Do it with that as a thought. And I think one thing we probably haven't touched on, which is worth thinking about, is, I never recruit on skills generally. I think by the time I'm talking to someone, I probably know that they're largely in the right space. But I'm really looking for an attitude, right? Because I can teach skills very quickly, but attitude is a heck of a thing to teach, right? And to change. So I'm looking for someone that kind of says yes a lot. Not yes as in I agree with you, yes, like a yes man, but saying, yeah, I'll give that a try. Yeah, I don't know if it'll work, but yeah, let's one of the worst things I hear in me, it turns me right off in a meeting, is when some guy's trying to give a solution or a potential solution to a challenge and say, hey, why don't we do this? And someone comes up with, the problem with that is, right? Anyone starting an answer with the problem with that is not actually trying to find a solution. It's just trying to kill off the solutions that other people talk about. So by saying, okay, how can we refine that idea to eliminate these challenges? I like, but constantly just saying why things won't work is, for me, a horrible attitude.
And exhausting.
Yeah, it's totally exhausting.
It's amazing. I've certainly seen in an environment, actually, it often doesn't matter how senior that person is. You could have the most senior person in an organization in a public forum saying, let's try this. The moment someone says, that's not going to work because X, Y, and Z, just takes the wind out of the sails.
It does. And so many things. We just witnessed this week, Elon Musk catching a booster with a pair of metal chopsticks in midair, right? So, I'm sure things can be done that we didn't believe could be done, right? So approaching it with, no, that's not going to work because, it just feels like instantly accepting the status quo. Mm. And the rate of change is getting faster, right? So, it took 100 years or whatever for a kind of an oxen to be replaced by a tractor, and now it's taking milliseconds for one AI system to be replaced by another AI system, and part of that is because they're functioning quicker than we can. Mm-hmm. And the only drag on technology today is our ability to accept it in a way, right? And that means that what couldn't be done throughout our entire life could probably well be done tomorrow.
I'm constantly of the theory that we should just expect that everything is doable. Everything is doable, especially with technology.
Yeah,
which is just a question of when.
Well, I mean, most businesses, the business models struggle not because the technology isn't available, it's because our imagination can't find the solutions to use the technology, right? So I think when again, our imaginations are replaced by computers, I think we'll see even more development of technology at an ever faster rate.
Yes. So bringing it back to our audience, because I agree with you, I think it's one of the real challenges of the people function. What do you think the role of a modern chief HR officer is today?
I think creating environments for people that they... So my second book was about the fact, and we touched on this in the elevator coming up here, there is no work-life balance, in my opinion, right? You either integrate them or you're going to fail ultimately at one or the other. And I'm not talking about a bus driver that drives from 9 till 5 and then gets out of his bus and doesn't see his bus again until 9 o'clock the next morning. I'm talking about generally within businesses where people have, they don't have the kind of 9 till 5 type roles, and they get the pressures from their leaders to say, I need this done tonight, so sorry, but can you stay on and finish it? And they said, well, I promised my partner that I was going to look after our baby tonight, and they're going out. They're supposed to go out on their one social for the last 3 weeks, and I need to be home. But then, how do I please both, right? And you very often get people effectively lying to their partners, and because they're too scared to say no in a work environment, mm-hmm. and that's
or vice
versa, and that's totally detrimental to the relationships you're trying to build in both cases, right? So by saying, okay, and the great thing about it is we have the tools now to do everything because we can go home and work. Mm-hmm. So you say, okay, I'm not going to get it done by 8 o'clock, but you said you needed it for first thing tomorrow morning. So I'm going to go home, put the little kid to bed, do what I need to do, and then I'm going to work on it, and it'll be ready by 2 a.m, right? And you'll still have it for your meeting. It's just not by 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right. So, and having that understanding of where the real constraints are, and allowing yourself to integrate work and life, means that you don't have to lie to. So, as part of the research, there was this study that I saw that it's something like 78% of middle management interviewed admitted that they lied to their partner about doing work at home, and down to the fact that they were going into the loo and checking their emails in the toilet, because if they tried to do them sitting in front of the TV, they get told off by doing their emails, right, and not being present. But actually they weren't present, they were simply sneakily doing it, right? And so I think, having this ability to engage the both, and we spoke about the fact that, you have this open door policy in the office, and come on, bring me your problem. And then at home, you go home and the kids go, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. And you go, can you give me a break? Please, just leave me alone for 5 minutes. And that difference in our approach to work and life shouldn't be there. We should be able to integrate those. Because after all, our families typically are our biggest stakeholders, right? And we're doing everything we do for them, right? So we can't be putting them at the bottom of the priority list. We need to find ways of engaging both parts of our lives into one. And that's, I think, the art of incredibly successful HR, people management, people leadership in their roles. It's finding ways that you can allow people to engage in both sides of their waking life in equal value.
And I think when you say it on the surface, it sounds it sounds awful, right? But it sounds like, you're a career CEO saying, hey, there should be no escape from it. But it's absolutely not. Because one of the things that we've done really well at Instant Impact is our flexible working environment. We don't care what hours people work, as long as the work's done for that big meeting, for that over the course of the week, as long as we care about outputs, not inputs. And what it's allowed us to do more than anything else is to engage in a really truthful dialogue with our team. So anyone can, you look at people's calendars, they have 2 hours blocked out for a doctor appointment. They'll have, I'm going for a 2-hour lunch break to the gym.
Absolutely. And these things should be perfectly acceptable, right? When you're asking them to deliver on a weekend back in the day, well, even now, I mean, if you want to go to a bank, you have to go in working hours, right? So how do you do that without taking time off work? Yeah, and there's little things like that you say, okay, well, I'm going to do that. Cool, just go and do it. And if you need work to be done in a later time, then just do it later, right? And I completely agree. There's this the tools now we have because of the ability to work from home and do all those things means there's no real excuse. Where you see big banks and the like insisting their people come to work.
Amazon most recently.
Well, because they're not creating leaders amongst their teams. They're trying to manage their teams. Right, and you've got people there that they've recruited because they haven't got the right attitude, right, and because they haven't probably cared about recruiting 5 people that work at a certain level in their company, so they don't care what attitude they have, and then they end up having to manage them because they have the bad attitude. So if you take people that have the right attitude, you should never have to manage them, and to help them have the right attitude, you have aspiration, right? So not making it jealousy. This guy gets a bonus, you don't. Saying, your steps in this company can be this if you have the right attitude. So you turn things into an aspirational process rather than a jealous process. And when you get to the US, a lot of the way that people look at successful people is aspirationally. And in the UK, often they look at successful people as a jealous kind of attitude, with a jealous attitude.
I think that's really true. And I'm just glancing down at the time, so it actually brings me very nicely onto my last question. So we're recording on the day of Sir Keir Starmer's UK Investment Summit, and it is in the UK for those who are listening abroad, of which I know there are many of you. It's felt a bit depressing over the last three years in particular. We've got some of the worst productivity in Europe. Was struggling, obviously left the European Union, and I think it feels like we're almost sputtering momentum being created. And I was just wondering, you've seen a lot, you've done business internationally, you know a lot about what's going on. I wonder where you see the UK's place in the world and how you think that's going to shape over the next couple of years.
Well, I think the one thing that will bring foreign direct investment into the UK is clarity. And no government over the last 5 or so years, including the current one, has any clarity in their vision. There is no vision. There's like, oh, we're going to make it great. Okay, so you're going to put these taxes up. What are they going to do? The bigger shoulders need to, and all this sort of stuff. But there's no clear vision. We are doing this because it's going to do this. And here are the stats behind it that shows that. And if we do this, it's going to make us look like that. And then people are going to put money in. There is no vision. There is no joined up thinking. And it hasn't been the case for the last 5 years. And that's why Britain has slowly declined in all the rankings of productivity, FDI, places to be, happiness at home, happiness at work. It's just progressively gone down. Obviously, there are things out of control, which is COVID and all those things that have occurred in that period. But it can simply be resolved by a joined up thinking at the top of leadership of the country, in this case, rather than the company, and saying, these are the things we're doing and this is why we're doing, and then stick to it.
Clear vision, clearly communicated.
Clear vision.
Sounds like the same answer we were talking about on a company level.
as I said, there's no kind of new stuff when it comes to how businesses, how country, how everything operates to an efficient level. The technology makes things faster, but actually, you've still got cash is still king. You've still got to be able to have great, inspired, motivated workforce, all the same things. And that's the same on a company level as it is on a country level. And you've got to have motivated employment environments and all the rest of it to make a successful country.
Wow, Mike, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Thank you for having me.